Estamos grabando la clase del grupo, siempre se me olvida, perdón, grupo 2, UMCE del día 31 de agosto del 2021. Estamos trabajando Noun Phrases y quedamos en, creo que pasamos todo lo de determiners, ¿cierto? Eso lo vimos, ¿cierto? Eso también lo vimos. Eso también lo vimos. 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 También. Y quedamos acá. ¿Sí? Sí. Okay, so we, as a quick summary, what we've been doing during these previous lessons is the following. Okay, what we're dealing with, we're dealing with noun phrases, and we have discussed the idea of concord, right? The idea of concord between the noun head and some other parts inside of this very same noun phrase, but also with the verb phrase, right? Therefore, we have this another idea, the subject verb concord, right? Subject verb concord. Also, we discussed the idea of determiners and the fact that determiners will provide the idea of definiteness, right? Determiners will provide the idea of definiteness. Also, that this is a group of words, and we can find inside of them articles, demonstrative, possessive, quantifying, and numbers, right? We also discussed the idea of pre, central, and post determiners, which leads us to the idea of a determiner phrase. Symbol, right? Right. I think that's it. I think that's it. So basically, during the previous lesson, we were beginning to discuss the idea of noun phrase, the complexity of a noun phrase, the extremely or indefinitely long noun phrase, and then concord, and then determiners, and that's it. So today we're going to deal with pre-modifiers, which is not that much. Okay, so noun phrase constituents. Pre-modification, all the items placed before the head other than determinatives, notably adjectives or adjective phrases and nouns. Okay, with this, Piper et al., he states the idea that determinants, they are not pre-modifiers. Why? Because they do not provide information about the head in the very same sense as an adjective, for example, right? Therefore, there is a difference. I took this definition out of Piper, and that's why it is stating this difference. All the items placed before the verb other than determinatives. Do you see that? So he's stating the difference between determinatives and pre-modifiers. Now, in the examples, this is very simple and easy and straightforward. What we have is a noun phrase, some furniture, and within that noun phrase, we have the noun head, furniture, and a determiner, pre-modifier, some, right? But then we start adding some other modifiers. In the second example, what we have is the they inserted an adjective, right? Um, an adjective pre-modifier. Therefore, nothing new. We have seen this uh, for a long time now, so no problem. Then some very expensive furniture. Now there's an adjective phrase inside of it. I'm going to do it. Some very expensive furniture. Okay. No. No. Oh, give me some very okay. Some very expensive furniture. This is a okay. So this is a noun phrase. Obviously, this is the noun head, quite obvious, and this is the determiner, pre-modifier. Inside of this, inside of this noun phrase, then what we have is an adjective phrase acting as a pre-modifier. And inside of that adjective phrase, we have an adverb, pre-modifier, and then an adjective head. Okay, what's interesting in this place is the definition of a modifier. Modifiers are items which are going to be used so as to present a new characteristic about the head, right? Then the question is, why is a phrase inside of that? Well, because the phrase is a unit, right? And is that unit the one which is providing information about the head? Therefore, what we have is an adjective phrase pre-modifier, right? What I want to do is stating this quite clearly. The relationship between a head and a modifier is a direct relationship, right? So the modifier provides information about the head. That's why it is part of the very same phrase. Now, the question is, can I say some furniture? That's my proof that some is the determiner pre-modifier of the noun head furniture, right? I can say it, right? But I can't say very furniture, right? But I can say very expensive. Therefore, is a unit, the one which is providing the information to the head. Therefore, what we have is the analysis that's presented in the on the screen, right? Then we have some other stuff, some very expensive furniture. Which is different because uh, this phrase contains a noun, right? It's basically the same idea. Ah, okay, so it's basically the same idea. The only difference is the presence of a noun pre-modifier. And if you remember from last term, this is a problem. The problem deals with the idea of one lexeme, right? A multi-word unit. So how can I prove whether office furniture is one single lexeme or two of them? Well, I would do it by replacement. What does it mean? It means that if I can replace furniture for any other type of similar, related, equal, I won't say equal, but similar, related, lexeme, then that will be the proof that office and furniture are two different, I don't know, two different lexemes, right? So I can say office furniture, but I can say, I don't know, dining room furniture or living room furniture. So as you can see, you can split them. Therefore, they are two different lexemes. Okay. And then what we have on the very end, some very, very expensive office furniture. What we have is a reduplicative adverb, but we're going to see that later on, so don't worry. Okay, summary. What can I find? What can I find inside of a noun phrase as a pre-modifier? Then you can find adjectives, adjective phrases, and nouns. Are there any other thing that I might find inside of a noun phrase? I would say no. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to find something else. But yeah, but there's something else. Okay. Let me review this a little bit. Okay, it's later on. Okay, post modification. Post modification means that you can also find modifiers after the head. We know that from before. Post modification comprising all the items placed after the head. Okay, this is something different, and I would say sort of difficult to explain, right? Mainly because the very same definition of a modifier means or states the fact that they are optional, right? They are optional. That is to say, I can erase them. However, you'll see that inside of certain noun phrases, there will be information which you can't erase. Therefore, how can I name them? And are they modifiers or not? In the sense of Quirk's analysis, then he states that complements then are a form of modifiers, right? So therefore, as you can see, as a post modifier, you can find several stuff, right? For example, prepositional phrases, the car outside the station, but also non-finite clauses, and those are very interesting. Okay, what we have there is another noun phrase. And this noun phrase then, its head is car, right? Um, right. But then next to that, we have a non-finite clause. Clause. A clause is a syntactic unit built around a verb phrase. That is to say, a clause is a syntactic unit made out of or made by phrases, but one of them must be a phrase, a verb phrase, right? Made by phrases, one of them must be a phrase, right? Right. Clauses, then, they inside of them you will see phrases, right? Therefore, they also have a valency pattern. Every single time that I see a verb phrase, there's a valency pattern inside of it. Okay. Clauses are of two different types: independent and dependent. Independent clauses means independent clause is the one which can stand on its own and has complete meaning. Like, for example, some very expensive no wait some very expensive furniture was sold, right? So that clause can stand on its own and it has complete meaning in comparison to standing outside the station. As you can see, standing outside the station is not completed and it requires some further information. Now, noun phrases can have or can get a clause as a post modifier, right? And one of those type of clauses is a non-finite clause. Okay, non-finite clause. Right, non-finite clauses. Why is this important? Well, because this was the very last content we saw during our previous course, right? So non-finite clauses are composed of a non-finite verb phrase, right? And as you already know, and as you'll remember, these non-finite clauses, they have forms, right? Which form, in this case, is an ing form. Therefore, the name for this non-finite clause is an ing non-finite clause. Why ing? Because the verb is inside is in its ing form, standing where? Outside the station, right? This is a prepositional phrase. So the name for this entire thing is non-finite ing clause. And this non-finite ing clause then is acting as a post modifier, right? And inside of that non-finite ing clause, what we have is a verb phrase verb made out of the verb head standing. And next to that, we have this prepositional phrase outside the station answering the question of where, therefore is an adverbial of place. And inside of that, I have the preposition head outside, and then the noun phrase complement the station, the determiner pre-modifier, the, and finally the noun head, right? ¿Algún problema hasta ahora? ¿Se entiende todo?
No, profe, no se entiende.
¿Qué no entiende?
No entendí el este del standing, porque ese cachipún de pulpo.
Ya, el cachipún de pulpo es este.
Sí.
En el rectángulo imaginario de la noun phrase, el head queda al medio, pre-modifiers, determiners, post-modifiers. ¿Sí? Sí. Ya. En teoría, hemos visto prepositional phrases como post-modifiers, ¿cierto?
Sí.
Lo que te cuento ahora es que aparte de las prepositional phrases, están las non-finite ing clauses, post-modifiers. ¿Ya?
Ya.
Ya.
Sí.
¿Por qué se llaman non-finite ing clauses? Primero, porque no tienen tense. Por eso son non-finite. ¿Sí? Y debido a que no tienen tense, tienen una forma específica, ¿cierto? ¿Te acuerdas cuáles son las formas de las non-finite verb phrases? Eran dos. Present participle, past participle. ¿Sí? Ya. Present participle eran las que tenían ing. Past participle eran los verbos con ed. ¿Sí? Sí.
Ya,
Si yo
sí.
veo standing outside the station, eso es una cláusula adentro de una frase. ¿Por qué?
Ya, sí.
Porque tiene un verbo, ¿cierto? Cierto. Ahora, ese verbo, standing, está en una forma específica y no tiene tense, no sé en qué tiempo está. Entonces es non-finite. ¿Qué forma tiene? ing. Y es una cláusula.
Ah, ya, ya.
Entonces, ¿cómo se llama toda esa cláusula? Non-finite ing clause. ¿Y qué está haciendo dentro de esa frase? Post-modifier.
Ah, ya, ya. Y todo lo de abajo es como...
¿Qué es esa
Está
cláusula?
como... Ya. Ah, ya, ya. Ahora caché.
¿Sí?
De hecho, según recuerdo, el semestre pasado no hubiésemos analizado esto así. Hubiésemos puesto standing como una verb phrase sola seguramente. Y no lo hubiésemos puesto que era una non-finite ing clause.
Porque no teníamos idea que era una non-finite ing clause.
Claramente.
¿Cachai? Ahora, por supuesto, the car is standing outside the station. Be very careful because you can have tons of different forms of this. Right? Let's take a look at the other one, relative clauses. The car that stood outside the station. The car that stood outside the station. The car that stood outside the station. Oh, I see. The car that stood outside the station is the very same thing, right? but there is a difference in this. Okay, so car, be, aquí, that stood outside the station. Can you translate that into Spanish? You can say, el auto que estuvo afuera o parado, ¿no? El auto que estuvo parado, el auto que estuvo afuera de la estación. ¿Qué? ¿Cierto? That. So that's the proof that I have a clause, right? What type of clause is this? This is a that relative clause acting as a post modifier. Why is it called in that way? Because it begins with that. Be extremely careful with the word that because it can be a determiner, right? Selective, the real name is selective, demonstrative determiner. El ejemplo, that house, right? That can also be a pronoun, right? A demonstrative pronoun. When you say, that is what I want. Right? Finally, that can be a conjunction. For example, the gift that you gave, so on and so forth. So be careful. The word that can be three different things and they are quite similar, all of them. The very first of them is a determiner, then it can also be a pronoun, and it can also be a conjunction. The problem is that when it's a conjunction, it can be omitted. Right? So you have to be very, very careful about that. Then how can I mark? How do I separate it? Inside of this, that relative clause, then what we have is a verb phrase and a prepositional phrase adverbial. So what do I do with the conjunction? I just write down conjunction. Why? Well, because conjunctions are linking devices. They are not, conjunctions, subordinate conjunctions. They are not inside of any phrase, right? So they just work on their own and they are used in order to link to different syntactic units. Okay. So that is just a conjunction. If you want to know the real name is a subordinate conjunction, then stood is a verb phrase, verb with a verb head, and then outside the station is just like the other one, prepositional phrase adverbial of place with a preposition head and a noun phrase complement with a determiner pre-modifier, and station is a noun head. Any question?
Profe, yo tengo una duda.
Dígame.
En el caso que fuese those, ¿cómo que se debería decir el nombre? Those relative clause, ¿o no?
Piensa, dame un ejemplo.
A ver. Lo mismo de ahí, pues, sería cambiar the cars, those stood outside the station.
No se puede.
¿No se puede?
No, pues piénsalo. The car those stood.
Those, esos pronoun. No
Ahí sería un
funciona como-
pronoun.
Claro,
Buena
decir, por
pregunta,
ejemplo, así como-
buena pregunta, porque abre caleta de. Mira. Veamos la cosa. Okay, the car those stood outside the station. Okay, I know this is noun phrase or something like that, right? Crap. Wait. El que se pierda que avise al tiro, porfa, no podemos avanzar sino que esto, claro. The cars, those stood outside the station, right? So car is the noun head. Now the question is, what is those? What do you think?
Profe,
Dígame.
¿se pega la misión de abrir el diccionario de Cambridge y buscar? Muchas gracias, qué bonito.
Oye, ¿qué vamos a hacer cuando volvamos a clase y no tengamos computadores, internet y todo corriendo? Okay, what we can see is that those, the word those. Oye, ¿ustedes dicen those o those? ¿Cómo dicen eso? ¿Lo dicen así o así?
Así como el Meo Deus.
Those, con
Meo
E.
Deus. No, dos nomás, así. Piola.
Mm,
Bien americano.
bien americanizado. Ah, bueno. Determinate pronoun. Okay, so those then is just a determiner or a pronoun. So in the question, in our classmate question, those can be a pronoun. Well, it doesn't make much sense, but it's because of the context, right? So the car, those put. Okay, I'm going to try to change the crash, yeah, because of the context. So in this context, as you can see, those is next to a verb. Therefore, it can be just a couple of things. Could it be a determiner? No. But why not? Because there's no noun next to that, right? Why? Because car is next to it. Yeah, but it's in front of them, in front of those, right? So it is not the head of those. Those requires another head. Why? Because those is a determiner and it goes at the very beginning of a noun phrase, right? So either we add a new noun like this, right? Or we assume it's a pronoun replacing an entire noun phrase, right? If we assume those is a pronoun, therefore is replacing an entire noun phrase, then what we have is this is new, and elided that. So what we have is that in this place, there was a that which was omitted by the speaker. The car that those crash outside the station. Therefore, this is still a clause and the names is still the same. That relative clause post-modifier. No sé si queda claro, chiquillos.
Ah,
¿Les queda claro? Si no les queda claro, díganmelo, porfa. No vamos a avanzar hasta que esto no esté.
pero el
excelente.
2,
No.
¿cómo está funcionando ahí?
En este caso es un pronombre.
Y al ser un pronombre lo hace una nueva, ¿cómo se llama? Se me olvidó el nombre. Corchete.
Cláusula.
Cláusula, perdón.
No, la cláusula la arma la verb phrase que está al lado, crash.
Comprendo.
Recordemos que la parte más importante de una cláusula es la verb phrase. Entonces, ¿qué marca la existencia de una cláusula? Es la verb phrase. ¿Cachai? Y si la miras, those crash outside the station, lo que vemos ahí es un balancing pattern. Hay un sujeto, those, hay un verbo, crash, y hay un adverbial del lugar, outside the station. ¿Sí? Hagámoslo entero. Dame un segundo. Ya Jesús, buena. Entonces, in our example then, the car, those crash outside the station, do you see that? Those, the weak form, that, therefore, that weak form, that is a conjunction, is a subordinating conjunction, that, right, which has been omitted. The car, those crash outside the station, right? And as you can see, those crash outside the station, then what you have is an entire clause, but a dependent one, which is placed inside of a phrase. ¿Le queda claro al resto o no?
Profe, yo tengo una
Profe,
duda.
yo como...
Tranquilo.
No, dale, no, dale, dale.
Vamos con el Paolo y después la compañera.
Que por qué, entiendo que por qué los corchetes se abren en those y no en crash. Crash. Esa es la duda que tengo.
Ya. Eso ocurre porque those es el sujeto de crash. ¿Sí? ¿Quién choca? ¿The car o those? Those. Y ahí parte la cláusula. Primer elemento. Segundo elemento. El that, la conjunction que está omitida, está antes de those. Y de ahí para atrás comienza la cláusula. Ay. The book that you recommended is very good. And as you can see here, what you have is a sentence, right? With a subject, a verb, and a subject complement. This is a verb phrase verb, a noun phrase subject, a verb phrase verb. Very good. Is an adjective phrase subject complement, right? The book is a determiner pre-modifier. Book is a noun head, and then I have that you recommended. So as I can see that, and I realize that when I realize this, that is not a pronoun, nor is neither a pronoun nor a determiner, then what I'm going to do is separating using brackets, square brackets, because it's a clause. Then I'm going to write down the name for this clause as it begins with that. Therefore, I know it's a that relative clause acting as a post modifier. And inside of that, I can see the verb phrase recommended. And who recommended? You. So this is the subject. So it is composed of that, which is a conjunction, plus the noun phrase subject you, which is created by the presence of the pronoun you, and then the verb phrase verb recommended made out of the verb head recommended. Then I have the verb head is, and then I have the adverb, pre-modifier, very, and the adjective head, good. And as you can see in this example, then inside of a noun phrase, you can have clauses as post modifier, post modifiers, And then one of these different clauses are called relative clauses, or yeah, relative clauses. And one of the relative clauses is the that relative clause, which begins with the conjunction that. ¿Queda claro?
Sí, profe, gracias.
Sí. El resto, ¿alguien alguna duda? Si me dicen que no, avanzo. Avanzo. (15:13) nos vamos a un break de 15 minutos, pues ya pasamos casi una hora llevamos en esto. Volvemos a las 15:30 y revisamos ese ejercicio. Así que volvamos a las 15, si alcanzamos de más. 15:35 volvamos. Volvemos a las 15:35 y revisamos ese ejercicio, usted lo hace. ¿Alguna duda de lo que hay que hacer?
No, profe.
Estamos. Hágale. Estamos grabando de nuevo. La idea de la oración es probar lo que hemos visto hasta ahora. Así que veámosla. ¿Ya? Half the time you gave me has been used. Half the time you gave me has been used in producing different goods. Okay, so what we are going to do at the very beginning is identifying the verb phrase. It has been used, right? This noun phrase subject has been used in what? In producing different goods. And this is the other part, like 3 different parts. The very first of them is a noun phrase subject with half the time you gave me. The head is time. And in front of that, we have half the, right? Which is a determinative phrase. And this is the pre-modifier. Inside of it, we have half D. D is a central determiner, and half is a predeterminer. Then that you gave me is a that relative clause. Post modifier. And inside of that, we have the verb, the subject, and one object. So the first element is that, which is a conjunction. Then a noun phrase subject made out of the pronoun head, you. Perdón, me equivoqué. A verb phrase verb, gave, and finally a noun phrase object with a pronoun head. Then we have the verb phrase verb has been used with used as the verb head, been as an auxiliary verb pre-modifier, and has as another auxiliary verb pre-modifier. Then we have in producing different goods. This is a prepositional phrase. Has been used in this. This is an object. And inside of that, we have the preposition head in, and then we have something different, producing different goods. If you realize producing is a verb, right? Therefore, what we have inside of this verb, of this prepositional phrase, is a clause, right? In producing different goods, right? So what we have is another clause over here. And what's the name for this clause? This clause is a non-finite ing clause. Acting as a complement of that preposition. And inside of that, we have the verb phrase and an object. And a noun phrase object different. Ay, me equivoqué. Different is an adjective. And goods is a noun head. This example, this example helps us to understand that, helps us. Deme un segundo, chiquillos, que están gritando los cabros chicos. Perdón, pero hay niños en la casa.
No se escuchaba, profe.
No se escuchaba, ya entonces lo reté porque soy un viejo pesado nomás, perdón. Ya, entonces, non-finite ing clause complement y aquí estábamos que esta prepositional phrase fue puesta allí y con ese tipo de complemento para demostrar que las non-finite clauses aparecen en diferentes lugares y no solo como post-modifiers inside of noun phrases, but also as prepositional complements. Okay? In the test, this is probably the difficulty you're going to find. However, it can be even more complex. Why? Because we could add an adjective phrase before time, like for example, have the extremely difficult time that you gave me has been used in producing several different goods, por ejemplo. ¿Sí? ¿Alguien tuvo algún problema con la oración? ¿Está todo bien entonces? ¿Algún
No,
comentario?
profe.
¿No? Ivana,
No,
¿dónde
no,
voy
es
yo?
que a mí me cuesta caleta identificar las cuestiones. Por ejemplo, en la primera parte del half the time, le había puesto que era una noun phrase con un noun pre-modifier, un determiner pre-modifier y el time como head.
Ivana, mira,
Y la cláusula tampoco la pude pillar bien y no hice nada bien y probablemente entre en un ataque porque no hice nada bien.
ya, pero
Pero
mira,
eso.
piensa siempre, una noun phrase tiene un patrón, no va a cambiar. Entonces, half the time, si eso fuera así, half the time, ¿cierto? Y tú me dices que esto es un noun pre-modifier, es imposible. ¿Por qué?
Ya.
Porque el primer elemento de una noun phrase es un determiner,
Ah, ya.
¿cachai? Ese es el primer elemento de la noun phrase. ¿Cachai?
Ujú.
Primero. Segundo, por meaning. Have es un número. No es un número, es un quantifier. ¿Cierto? Es una palabra que indica la idea de número. No es un número. Have. Right? Y sabemos que los determiners, los artículos son los central y adelante de ellos solo van predeterminers. ¿Cachai?
Ujú.
Como está puesto acá. ¿Cachai? También sabemos que el espacio del determiner, ese espacio solo puede ser ocupado por una cosa. ¿Qué quiere decir eso? No puedo tener dos determiners juntos, pre-modifiers. No puedo. O tengo un determiner pre-modifier o tengo una determiner phrase. ¿Cachai?
Ujú.
No hay dos determiners pre-modifiers juntos. Eso. para que lo recuerden.
Ya, tengo otra duda. ¿Por qué
Diga.
en la cláusula que es relativa en el that you gave me separó el you, el gave y el me? ¿Es porque las tres son importantes?
No, pues porque es una cláusula. Piénsalo así.
Ya,
Piénsalo así.
pero...
Grammatical hierarchy. ¿Cierto? Entonces
ujú,
tengo el morpheme, uno o más morphemes, un lexeme. Uno o más lexeme, una frase. Una o más frases, una cláusula. ¿Ya? Ya.
ya,
Mira el nombre. El nombre es that relative clause.
ujú,
Cláusula. Adentro hay frases.
ya,
Por eso las separé. ¿Cachai? Que that you gave me es una cláusula. Adentro hay frases.
ujú,
Hagámosla acá. That you gave me. Eso es una cláusula al tiro. ¿Cómo sé eso al tiro? Porque hay un verbo. Donde hay una verb phrase hay una cláusula.
ya,
Siempre, siempre. Profe, o sea que si yo digo stop, así signo de un signo pare, ¿es una cláusula? Sí, pues es una cláusula. ¿Cachai? Donde hay un
ujú,
verbo y una cláusula. Entonces, como veo verbo, veo cláusula. Y cuando hay cláusula, hay sujeto, predicado, objeto, complemento, hay todo eso.
ya,
¿Cachai? Entonces, por eso, gave. ¿Quién te dio a ti? You. ¿Y a quién le dio? Me. Por eso lo separé.
ya,
¿Cachai? Las cláusulas están hechas de frases, pero una obligatoria tiene que ser una verb phrase.
ya.
¿Sí? Sí. Lo que es mentira, Ivana, porque después en tercero te van a enseñar que hay cláusulas sin verb phrase, pero en tercero. Vos tranquila nomás. Eso. ¿Qué más le pasó?
Ahí lo otro con lo que quedé pilla es por qué el has been used quedó ahí como ahí.
Ya. Hay una cláusula grande, 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 grande. ¿Cuál es la cláusula grande, 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 grande? Half the time that you gave me has been used in producing different goods. Esa es una cláusula grande, 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 grande. ¿Cómo sé que es cláusula? Porque tiene una verb phrase. La busco.
Eso.
Has been used. Esa es la verb phrase. Esa es la verb phrase que genera toda la cláusula grande, 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 grande. ¿Sí? Sí. ¿Por qué le pongo color con eso? Porque that you gave me está dentro del sujeto. Es parte de la
Ya,
cláusula grande, grande, grande. Es como si yo te dijera que esta cláusula grande, grande, grande es este rectángulo, ¿cachai? Y que al medio tengo la verb phrase. La estoy mirando, la que tengo acá. Atrás tengo la prepositional phrase y adelante tengo esta noun phrase, ¿sí? Pero
ujú,
adentro de esta noun phrase, aquí chiquitito, está la that relative clause. Entonces, esta chiquitita es parte de esta, y esta es parte de esta otra más grande.
ya. Entonces que hay piola, po, porque hay piola.
Queda ahí piola porque de hecho la reemplazo y me la llevo entera con un pronombre. Mira, it has been used. ¡Pum! Se fue
Ah, ya,
todo.
ya, ya.
¿Qué significa eso? Significa entonces que it means then that the noun phrase begins in have and it ends in me. Why? Because I can replace the entire unit by a pronoun. Y esa es la prueba inequívoca de que es una noun phrase.
Ya.
Porque después,
Comprendo.
en 2 segundos más adelante en el futuro, vamos a ver esto, mira. Ya, pues, pesado, córtala. Ah, ah, vamos que se puede. Have you ever seen this type of writing, this type of sentences? I imagine you do. What has been said is this. It is this, ¿cierto? Y eso de ahí, ese sujeto no está hecho por un noun, por una noun phrase. Es otra cosa. Les queda, lo ven, ¿cierto? Le hablo a todos, ese es el punto. ¿Cachan que what has been said no está hecho por una noun phrase? Está hecho por otra cosa. Es una cláusula. Ahí está el verbo. Ahí está el sujeto de eso adentro. ¿Cómo se llama esto? Se llama WH nominal clause. Y eso es el sujeto. ¿Por qué se llama WH? Porque parte con una WH. ¿Por qué nominal? Porque está trabajando como noun, como una noun phrase. ¿Por qué clause? Porque tiene verbo. Igual la cambio toda por un pronombre. It is this. ¿Cachai? Me prueba nuevamente que los pronouns se llevan cosas que trabajen como nouns. No solo noun phrases, pero cosas que trabajen como noun. Y así sabes dónde parte y dónde termina. El resto, ¿cómo le fue? ¿Está todo bien?
Profe, yo tengo una duda. ¿Por qué
Dígame.
en la propositional phrase parte el corchete se abre en producing y no en in? Esa,
El corchete se abre en in. Mira, ahí está con rojito.
o sea, el corchete, me refiero al cuadrado, como el cuadrado.
Ya, porque
el
con
square
corchetes,
brackets.
con square brackets, estamos cerrando cláusulas. ¿Cachai? Que parte aquí, pum, pum, pum. Ahí parte la cláusula, pum, pum, ahí está. Y el nombre de la cláusula es esa, Non-Finite ING Clause. ¿Por qué Non-Finite? Porque parte con el verbo producing. Y el verbo producing tiene la forma ing. Y ese es el complemento de la preposición, producing different goods. Y luego marco en round brackets frases. Por eso producing está cerrado en round brackets y different goods está cerrado en round brackets, porque son las frases de la non-finite ing clause. Ahí está marcado. ¿Le queda claro?
Sí, profe, pero mi duda es por qué está ahí. O sea, ¿por qué se parte ahí, no en el square brackets?
Porque el in, ya, buena pregunta. No, fui honesta, me gusta. Eso es una prepositional phrase, ¿cierto? In producing this. Es una prepositional phrase. ¿Cómo sé eso? Porque hay una preposición. Esa. Ah, pesado. Esa. Como es una prepositional phrase, la marco como es frase en round brackets. ¿Sí? Sí. Canónicamente, canonically, we have said, or grammarians have stated, that a prepositional phrase begins with a preposition head and then it's being followed by a noun phrase complement. This is the canonical, the easiest form. However, you can change this noun phrase into ing clauses, ed clauses, and sometimes even another prepositional phrase. Right? Right. Therefore, as I said, preposition head in and then noun phrase complement, I say noun phrase, I have to separate it from the preposition by another bracket. Right? Right. In this case, producing this is a non-finite ing clause. Therefore, I am going to separate this by using square brackets because we separate clauses by using square brackets. And then inside of this, we have round brackets because we have two phrases, one verb phrase and one noun phrase, right? Right. If you think a little bit, then why in is left aside, is left behind, is not being considered inside of the complement? It is because prepositions are linking devices. Prepositions, in fact, are linking devices, are just like conjunctions, something quite similar to a conjunction. This is so important, and we are changing the view that Pablo Corvalani and Leo, they call the noun phrase complement, they call it nominal group. And some other grammarians, some other teachers, they call it object of the preposition. or prepositional object. Por eso la preposition queda fuera. No sé si le queda claro.
Sí, profe, muchas gracias.
Como yo lo veo,
Ujú.
los ing que no están en la verb phrase grande son los que causan el problema. Entonces quedan en brackets, o sea, en una clause. Y si es que toman cosas alrededor de ella, van juntos en el bracket, porque también son un problema.
Ya, yo lo voy a intentar poner en términos grammar. Los ing generan el problema, porque lo que hacen el ing es pegar. No lo dije en grammar, sorry, fallé a las 3 palabras. The ing clause creates the problem because what they do is adding extra information, right, to the main clause. Therefore, you can think of them as post-its, right? It's like it's like that you're having something like, I don't know, something like an object, and then you're adding some other stuff to that object. And therefore, what you need is something that helps you glue them, to link them, right? Therefore, that's why you have prepositions, conjunctions, prepositions and conjunctions. That's why you need to glue them to the main stuff. No sé si se entiende mejor in that manner or not. Eso, más dudas, queda claro, está absolutamente difícil y nadie entiende nada. Estamos entonces, todo bien, porque estamos en la hora. Ya, estamos bien entonces. Chiquillos, yo les tengo que enviar o prefiero dejarlo hasta aquí, que le den una vuelta a la clase, revisen. Y en la próxima clase, que es el día jueves, ¿cierto? Jueves. Volvemos a la idea de Non-Finite Clauses, Relative Clauses, las trabajamos más. Les quiero recordar también que